the pro-abortion people have been very effective at the clump of cells. And in fact, of recent times, The Guardian have even put out photographs basically showing nothing and saying, this is what happens in an abortion. Very, very dishonest. So that dishonesty needs to be met with the truth.
Hello, Anne.
Hello, Phil. My name is Anne McElhinney.
And I'm Phelim McAleer.
Just in case you don't know my name, Phelim. And welcome to the Anne and Phelim Scoop. This is the end of summer. I'm going to start crying now. Got to stop that now. Yeah, this is the end of summer. And in fact, at the end of the programme, I have an end of summer poem. You got to hang on for that.
Boy.
And next week...
Now that's a teaser.
That's a teaser. Next week is Labour Day. We won't be here next week, but let's get going. So, Phelim, what is in the show today? What are we doing today, this week?
We're going to be talking about an Irish constitutional referendum and a referendum to amend the Irish Constitution.
There you go.
Is being postponed because no one can define a woman. It's basically Ireland is afraid. Basically. Let me translate it for you. Ireland is afraid of, Irish establishment are afraid of TERFs, and that's why they are postponing a constitutional amendment. We'll come to that.
And to our lovely friends out there who don't know what a TERF is.
Trans-exclusionary radical feminist, as in people who are sceptical about the trans madness.
And Phelim.
What else is on the show?
What else is on the show?
You'll never guess what happened when a transgender, racially aware coffee shop opened in West Philadelphia. Success, I'm sure.
West Philadelphia, a neighbourhood we know quite a bit about.
It's changed a bit since those days, but still the same madness. And I love this one. The New York Times finally admits California is in decline. Doesn't really understand why, and the solution is we're just going to have to live with it.
And if you want to know why California is in decline, guess how much a sheriff's deputy can earn in overtime over 5 years.
You guess.
We'll get.
You don't know. You don't know that.
We'll get to that.
So Gosnell, our Gosnell movie, also on the show. Our Gosnell movie was based on a true story. We made that back about in 2018. Yeah, but it's never been more relevant.
Yes.
And we look at some of the scenes that still resonate today. We're going to go back and look at the Gosnell movie, which many of you funded. Thank you very much. And. Environmental scare proved false. Number 9,353,562. That's how many environmental scares have proved false. I actually exaggerated that figure, as you probably get.
I get that. Boom. He exaggerated that because environmental scares are an exaggeration in the first place themselves.
You see?
Yeah.
It's
clever. It's a little clever. Look at us, last days of summer kind of festivities.
So we look at the fake news on the death of the honeybee.
Oh my God. And as I said, we have a poem for the end of summer. But
so I was
starting out, Phelim, with this. We're obviously, as you probably know, still in Ireland, and yes.
So my attention was attracted by this article in the Irish Times. It's a strange article, actually, not saying much, but saying a lot. And as we always say on the Anne Phelim Scoop, when journalists don't say anything or don't ask questions, it's because they don't like the answers. So the opening paragraph is: there's growing expectation in the Irish government that a referendum to replace the article of the Constitution that refers to, quote, women's duties in the home, close quote, will not go ahead in November. Right? So let me just tell you what that...
So in the original Irish Constitution,
which still exists...
Dated what date?
From 1930s, early 1930s, I believe. Written by De Valera in the... Well, historians just say this, written by De Valera in a room in the Shelburne Hotel. In a suite in the
Could be at the bar though, right?
No, I don't think he drank. But
see the way my brain always works. Very disappointing.
But no one ever says why was he in the Shelburne Hotel? Anyway, lovely hotel, by the way, if you're ever
very,
in Dublin.
very nice.
So Article 41.2 of the Irish Constitution proclaims that the state will, quote, endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of their duties in the home. So,
duties in the home.
So, obviously, this is a terrible thing to have in your constitution. The horror, the humanity. People are just oppressed all the time. However, and they want to replace it. However, let me read you the Irish Times' strangely worded article. Difficulties in agreeing a wording for a replacement article and fears that a referendum campaign could lead to divisive debates about the definition of the family and gender issues have led to a growing expectation that the vote will be postponed. Get the last bit there, and gender issues. They took a long time to get that there.
Yeah, that's a little bit buried there.
Yeah, then they go on and say several senior officials and political sources direct knowledge of the discussions have told the Irish Times they don't expect it to happen. There's no chance of this happening, said one senior official. A senior politician says, my political gut says this won't happen in November. A group of senior officials who are working on a proposed text have yet to reach agreement.
These would be experts, by the way.
Experts. But what would be the problem, like, with just saying everyone's equal under the Constitution?
I don't see a problem.
Right, that women don't have this exalted status, the Constitution shouldn't, but it should protect women in the workplace and women in the home. If you think that's a good thing, and that's, that's up to you. But what would be wrong? How would that be difficult to phrase? It's amazing. Sources, I like this, but sources say their discussions have prompted a growing awareness of the potential political pitfalls in proposing changes to our constitutional articles. It should change, but I'm not sure to what. It's understood their fierce questions could arise during the campaign about the definition of a family and gender issues.
The definition of a woman. Let me translate that for the Irish Times.
Yes, the definition of a woman. Leaving ministers facing questions to which they do not have clear answers. So
Nicola Sturgeon might have something to say about that. You'll remember Nicola Sturgeon, First Minister of Scotland, who had a real problem answering the question about what a woman was, and in fairness...
And whether a male rapist should be in a female jail, and really lost her job over that. So... here it is. We will have to be able to answer what is the family. One politician said, this is complete nonsense. This is covering up. No, people can answer what a family is, right? But answering what a woman is, now we went from the land of saints and scholars to the land where senior elite politicians can't tell you what a woman is. So they're wary of the referendum campaign could become a debate about gender, prompting questions about transgender issues that have proved highly contentious elsewhere.
I love this quote. This is one of those things that you wade into at your peril.
So brave our politicians are.
Oh yeah.
So brave our
So every political party in Ireland, every one of them, is in the same dilemma of being completely unable to decide what a woman is. Mm-hmm. So very unrepresentative, I would say, though, however, of the population. So...
Well, what happened then would be that these people from the far right, they would then get...
the worst.
They would then get political credibility because they would be able to answer that question, you see.
Those far right ones.
And then
the worst.
That might mean the establishment was under trouble then, a bit of trouble then. You see.
Not good.
Have that.
Could not have that.
Couldn't have these smelly people getting elected now, these far right smelly people. So, West Philadelphia.
Let's go. What's happening in West Philadelphia?
Wonderful world.
All the way over in West Philadelphia, our old stomping ground, West Philadelphia. We're going to come to that later again.
Where Kermit Gosnell had his House of Horrors. So there's a new House of Horrors in West Philadelphia. So this is a story that was in the Max Meyer blog, and it's a story of Kate Egghardt and Sonam Parikh, who opened a coffee shop on February the 28th, 2020, called Mina's World, home of West Philadelphia, home of Dr. Gosnell, who we'll be talking about later. 2 weeks later, then it was shut down. It was opened in February 2020. It was shut down by the pandemic, or rather the reaction to the pandemic, and they started a takeaway. Now things were not looking good for the takeaway, because, or even back then, because it was a hatch to a window, right, out onto the street where the takeaway was. People would come up, grab the thing, and go. But the staff insisted that the customers, and aggressively insisted that the customers who approached them for a millisecond outside and grabbed the thing wore a mask. And so that didn't do much to endear them with the locals. But I suppose we should have... There was a few red flags there. The place closed a couple of years later, following a campaign by its 4 employees, and who basically tried to do a kind of communist takeover of the means of production, or as they called it, and this is in the Max Meyer blog, a radical accountability process. So Egghardt, one of the owners, identifies as a transgender woman. Parikh identifies as queer. Both identify as people of colour. Did that protect them? Of course it didn't. The revolution eats its own. Look, the revolution, they start off saying, we're going to take down power, but it's much easier to take down the people around you, the vulnerable people around you. And by the way, growing up in Northern Ireland, I've always thought many people who ask for a little sideway, ask for a return to violence. The problem with return to violence is that violence isn't against the enemy. The easiest people to be violent against are the vulnerable people in your own community. And this is what happened at what was the name of the Mina's coffee shop or something like that? Yes. So in West Philadelphia. So listen to this, each of their 4 employees were trans or black. And with the help of a Philadelphia NGO, the Black and Brown Workers Cooperative, the employees put their employers through hell. We are facing systematic employer opposition, manipulation, abuse of power, exploitation, anti-blackism, ableism, hostility, and complete disregard for our livelihoods, they said. Their list of grievances included anti-blackness in a multitude of forms and occasions, tokenizations as a way to appear safe by association, tokenization, ableism in the form of inaccessibility. I love the one. It was all very vague except for one. They can only find one instance of anti-blackness, and that was when a group of black teenagers stole Mina's World tip jar, which was the employees' tips, and customers ran after them to retrieve it, and the employees were very, 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 very upset that the owners didn't defend the thieves.
I saw that coming.
Yes.
Very upset that the owners didn't defend the thieves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then
everyone saw that coming, Phil. Everyone saw that coming.
In a separate complaint, the employees accused the owners of wage theft. So anyway, the radical accountability process, i.e. madness, a mad revolution, came to an end in June 2022 when Eckhart and Parikh agreed to the employee demands, including the idea that Mina's World would be turned into a cooperative that the employees would own as a reparation for all the damages that was done. It's not a happy ending.
It's a lovely ending. I'm very happy with that.
Let's go and have a coffee there. No, we can't go and have a coffee there because there's just one problem. Egghart's mother, who happened to be a Korean immigrant and successful accountant and the owner of the building. She was having none of it, and she refused to answer to the reparations committee of the glorious revolution of West Philadelphia, so she put the building up for sale.
One problem with that.
What?
The building was owned by somebody?
No. The workers then set up a GoFundMe. The Revolutionary Workers Committee then set up a GoFundMe to raise money to buy Mina's World coffee shop, buy the building actually, and the mother's share of the business. So the goal was to raise 200,000. How much did they raise?
Not a lot.
10,000. Did they give the money back when they didn't reach the total? No, they kept it themselves. Because that's what you do in the revolution. You keep the money for yourself. And that's the end of Mina's World. And that's the end of a nice coffee shop in West Philadelphia. As they call it, a caffeinated haven for queer and trans people of colour was destroyed by a flipping Marxist.
The revolution needs its own, isn't it?
Revolutionary clique of queer and trans people of colour. So, what else is on the show, Anne?
I think our plan is to talk about the Gosnell movie because it's very timely right now.
For people who don't know, Kermit Gosnell was an abortion doctor in West Philadelphia. This is the West Philadelphia show. In West Philadelphia, and he was convicted of 3 counts of murder and 1 of manslaughter. He killed babies and patients. And I mean, if there are children listening for this particular bit, probably turn the volume down a little. The babies would be born alive, and he would do late term abortions. The babies would be born alive, and then he would kill them by stabbing them in the neck after they were born alive. So that was he did. So he did hundreds, if not thousands, of these in a 30, probably thousands, tens of thousands of these in a 30-year period. And I can say tens of thousands without fear of exaggeration, perhaps. You'll see why. He was charged with these offences because that was a crime then. Probably still is just a crime now. But the prosecution wanted to show what a good abortion was, what a proper all-American abortion was. And so they brought in an abortion doctor. The first thing, and we have the transcripts.
And the reason we made the movie, the reason we wrote the book, the reason we've done all this work on this Gosnell story was for this very particular piece of testimony, which was extraordinary to us. We thought we knew it all. You think you've been around, you think you've heard things and that you know things, and then you discover that it's much worse than you thought, and things are going on that are legal that you had no idea. And in fact, actually, when this testimony was heard in the court, the journalists were looking at each other. The journalists were looking at each other and checking with each other, going, Did we just hear what we just thought we heard? It's an incredibly dramatic moment. We were very lucky. We had Janine Turner played this part in the movie.
And then Nick's seriously directing. And also Nick is playing the defence attorney in this case. And this is very, very close to the actual transcript, except for one thing. Watch the clip and we'll tell you the one bit that is not a transcript, and we'll tell you why.
Dr. North, how many abortions would you say you've performed in your career?
I have performed over 30,000 abortions.
Wow. In the second trimester, what method of abortion do you use?
Mostly D&E, dilation and evacuation.
Yes. Dilation is where you soften and widen the woman's cervix, correct?
That is correct. Once the fetus grows larger, it's very important that we do that to prevent the cervix from tearing as the fetus is removed.
And then you evacuate the fetus. You remove it from the womb.
Yes. But first, we have to make sure that it's not a live birth.
Oh, of course. Of course. How do you do that?
Well, we inject potassium chloride into the heart of the fetus.
With one of these, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I'd like to introduce Defense Exhibit 1A on the screen. May I publish?
You may publish.
Now, this is a sonogram of a 23-week-old fetus. And so when you inject the fetus, do you put the needle here?
No.
Here?
Yes.
Right there. And that stops the heart.
That's correct.
And then you use forceps. You use these and you reach up in there and you grab a hold of an arm or a leg or whatever and you pull on it until it comes out or comes off. Correct?
That's correct. But with larger fetuses, they remain intact.
Of course, because the head's bigger. Makes it more difficult. What do you do then?
We use a machine to suction out the gray matter.
The gray matter, the brains. So you suction out the brains, and then what happens?
Then the skull collapses and the fetus can be removed.
Right. Now, isn't it true that sometimes in order to get the suction machine into the fetus, you have to use a pair of scissors to make a hole in the back of the neck?
Sometimes this happens, yes.
So before, when you said that you'd never cut the neck of a fetus...
I was referring to a live birth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get it now. Have you ever had a live birth during an abortion attempt, Doctor?
No, I have not. Because we listened to the sonogram to ensure that the fetal heart has stopped.
Well, what if you made a mistake?
We don't.
Well, what if you did?
Objection, hypothetically, Your Honor.
Your Honor, she's a medical expert. I'd like to have her opinion.
Overruled. I'm going to allow the question, but stay on point, counselor.
What would you do if the baby was out and it was breathing?
We would issue comfort care.
Comfort care. Can you define that for us?
That's keeping the fetus warm and comfortable. Eventually, it will pass.
Eventually, it would pass. So basically, you'd let it die. Seems like it'd be more humane to just take a pair of scissors.
Objection!
Withdraw the question, Your Honor.
A lot to talk about there.
So yeah. I think the first thing that we want to say there is that the first thing she's asked, because in the trial, what actually happened in the trial was, they have to always, when you have an expert witness, you have to make sure that they're an expert. And the way to do that is to, check out their expertise, check out their work experience. And so the first question that was asked of the actual person in the trial was, well, in your career, how many abortions have you done? Now, as you just heard, Janine Turner answers in the movie script and says 30,000. By the way, which got a gasp from the jury, got a gasp in the movie.
Only gasp on the whole trial.
However, the truth was that in the trial, in the actual trial, the actual abortion doctor who was on the stand was asked the same question, and their answer was 40,000. We changed it because we thought people would get such a shock that the number was so big that they wouldn't believe anything after that, and they wouldn't have a chance to check it out, and so they would kind of dismiss the movie too early on. So we actually changed that. Even at 30,000, by the way, it's very shocking, but 40,000, this is kind of gives you an indication of the industrial nature of the business, of the abortion business. But it was the reason why we did this movie, because of the very graphic, very extraordinary, very shocking,
very truthful description of abortion.
Description of abortion,
And
including comfort care, which we didn't believe was something legal. And of course, pretty much around the same time, I think after the movie came out, then we heard repeatedly, we had Governor Northam and a number of other dignitaries, people in the legislation across America saying the very same thing, saying, yeah, that actually happens.
That's what happens.
That we would neglect
standard operating procedure.
that we would neglect a baby to death, that would be legal. So we thought that was the main reason for the main reason for all this work, and in fact, it's the reason for the Unreported Story Society, to which you have been so supportive and so kind and so generous. And without you, we wouldn't have been able to make the movie. So we're going to look at one other clip right now, which we think is very significant.
Yes, this is the clip about Baby Boy A, the baby who led to Gosnell's downfall. They believed he was doing this, they believed he was doing that, they had some evidence, but he was, towards the end, the babies were getting increasingly older and older to be born. And the rise of the smartphone, don't forget, around 2013, 2010, when this photograph was taken, some of the staff were so shocked, and I think they wanted out. They felt like they were in some kind of cult in that clinic, and they wanted out, and they started taking photographs. Adrian Moten was. So
Adrian Moten took this photograph, and a number of other staff took the photograph as well. They were so shocked because this baby was born on the 12th of July, same birthday as my father, same date, which always struck me. He was born alive and was put into a container, as you hear in this you'll hear it in this piece, and people saw him, many members of the staff saw him, and he curled himself up and tried to kind of, and people, there were other witnesses, expert witnesses who came on and were asked, what would a baby of that age feel? And they said he would feel cold, he would be very sensitive to the light. And so in a caring environment, a child, they lower that lighting in the neonatal unit. They would have the child kept really warm and nourished and watched after. However, that is the very opposite of what this child received in terms of care.
Yes.
It's very shocking. The whole story is very shocking, but it had a massive effect on people. This photograph had a massive effect on people. We're not going to show anything, just so you know, we're not going to show anything, but it's one question I have for you, and maybe you'd write and tell me in the comments what you think, but the power of photographs, and I think there's a large debate. I think I was really conscious of that when we were doing this movie, in the pro-life movement, whether or not to use photographs, whether or not to show photographs, because they're obviously very shocking, but they're also true, particularly the photographs in this from the trial, because they've got nothing to do with the pro-life movement. They're evidence in a trial, and many of the photographs shown in the court case were not of legally murdered children. They weren't murdered children, according to the experts who were given evidence. Many of the photographs were of children that had been legally aborted.
Yes.
So they're unimpeachable.
Pennsylvania had a 24-week limit then, but now New York has a 9-month limit. California's 9-month limit. Colorado's a 9-month limit. So there's real questions whether Gosnell would be convicted today or not. So let's watch. One other thing about this, what we decided to do, when we were shooting this particular scene, and I remember I was in Oklahoma and talking to the people we had playing our jury,
And I thought, you know what, we'll show them the actual picture. Let's show them the actual picture of baby boy A. So now, you know, and those of you who have seen the movie before will realise you don't see it, the audience doesn't see it, but our actors saw it, and we did one take. We didn't need to do a second take. We asked them to react, you know, naturally to whatever they saw. Obviously they heard the actor, you know, set up the scene and say what they were about to look at, and then they saw the picture, and I mean, this is what happened. Let's have a look at this.
Betty, you like to take pictures, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
You take a lot of pictures, right? Pictures of your meals, pictures of things you see on the street, pictures of your friends.
Yes.
Did you ever take a picture inside Dr. Gosnell's clinic?
Yes.
On that particular night, do you remember taking a picture of baby boy A, the baby you saw Dr. Gosnell put up on that shelf?
Objection. Overruled. The witness may answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, in light of this new evidence, we would like to be granted the opportunity to publish this photograph.
Objection, Your Honor. This is
People's
outrageous.
Exhibit
This was not presented in discovery.
Order.
C5. If
This
we
court
need
will
any-
come to order. I declare a short recess. I want to see both counsels in my chambers now.
Your Honor, may the Commonwealth publish the exhibit to the jury?
You may publish.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is the photograph that Betty Goodwin took of baby boy A on the night of July 12th. Betty, is this the photograph that you took?
Yes.
I just have one last question for you. Why did you decide to take a photograph of this particular baby?
He was so big. He looked like he could have been somebody's little brother. I just thought that there should be a picture of him to show that he was here for a little while.
So it's very powerful. And I just remember, you know, so Adrian Moten took that photograph, and Adrian Moten, you know, when the cops caught up with her and asked her, you know, whatever, she volunteered and she actually gave them that photograph, and she said, now I'm free.
Yeah.
Now I'm free. You know, finally I'm free. She had kept the phone for years, knowing that the photograph was there. And she said that she always thought, you know, one day she knew somebody would come. Someday somebody would come and ask for that photograph. And I think the power of the photograph is extraordinary. I mean, again, you haven't seen it, but those of you who want to see it, it's on the internet. Baby Boy A, Gosnell case, you'd find it if you Google it, without any much difficulty. But then you never unsee it, you know. It had
Yeah.
incredible power, and I remember one lovely young lady. We've never met her, but we saw it on the internet, on her Instagram account. She tattooed baby boy A on her wrist so that she would always remember to pray for this baby that had been so brutally murdered by Kermit Gosnell. And I just thought, what an extraordinary thing. We'll put that picture up on the internet. What an amazing thing. So she put a tattoo for her life. She has a tattoo, so he won't be forgotten. And a lot of people have told us that they were very moved, very changed. We know a lot of people who changed their opinion on abortion because of this movie.
Yes.
That's
So
the power of it.
don't forget, this movie was funded by you. We raised
Thank
2.2
you.
million through Kickstarter, through Indiegogo, was it?
I think in the end, yes,
Kickstarter
Indiegogo.
threw us off, Indiegogo, crowdfunding. So we rely on you to get these things done, to make these movies. If you like what you just saw there, go to the unreportedstorysociety.com, give what you can, because there's plenty more where that came from, and we need to keep going.
And at the beginning there, I mentioned Ohio. So already since Roe v. Wade, there have been 6 ballot initiatives, 3 of them pro-life, 3 of them pro-abortion. The pro-life side has lost
Everyone.
all 6 of them, which is shocking. And those ballots have actually enshrined in the constitution of those states, including states like Kansas, by the way, and Montana. They have enshrined in those states basically, abortion on demand,
Yeah.
pretty much in all of them. The next one that's coming up is in November 7th in Ohio. And again, the wording on that ballot is very, very ambiguous. It talks about the health of the mother. They say they're going to cut off abortion at viability. However, they say the health of the mother. And the health of the mother, by the way, defined, I think in Ohio, is economic, mental health, physical health. So in other words, any reason at all.
Any reason at all.
So we need to be paying attention to this, and we need to be talking about this a lot, because the people in Ohio are going to be facing this ballot measure.
So, to go on to a lighter note, I suppose.
Yes.
Yes. But by the way, please please leave your comments on the YouTube channel. If you watch this on YouTube, leave your comments there. Tell us what you think about using photographs as a campaigning tool in the abortion debate,
or as an information tool. I mean, it's an educational tool too,
Yes.
because I think what the photographs do is because the pro-abortion people have been very effective at the clump of cells.
Yes.
They've had they've pushed the clump of cells, and in fact, of recent times, the Guardian have even put out photographs. Very misleading photographs, very, super, you talk about misinformation, photographs basically showing nothing and saying this is what happens in an abortion. Very, very dishonest. So that dishonesty needs to be met with the truth of what it is that dies in an abortion, even at the earliest of stages. So have a think about it and let us know what you think, because we have some ideas.
Yeah. So bees are going extinct, aren't they, Anne? We
Isn't
know
that
that.
it, Philip?
The honeybee is endangered. They're dying off. There's a disease, the colony disorder, bee disorder. So anyway, New York Times, which has been pushing, let's put up some headlines of the media and the New York Times, pushing this for years. So they have a story now. Gorad Trusnovek, a 50-year-old with a greying goatee, who is the founder and sole employee of an enterprise called Najim Panji, which translates to rent a hive, right? He goes and puts hives on top of businesses and offices.
In a response to the fact that we were told that all the bees were dying.
It creates new bees and it creates new hives, and it makes the business feel good, it makes the employees feel good, they have honey. But now apparently all this bee mania is creating an ecological challenge because there's
too many bees.
It's not, yeah. And as he says, if you overcrowd any space with honeybees, there is competition for natural resources. And since bees have the largest numbers, they push out other pollinators, which actually harms biodiversity. So the birds are being pushed out by these hundreds of millions of bees. I would say the best thing now you could do for the honeybees right now is not to take up beekeeping, because it even pushes out other bees. And New York Times says, it's also because there's a widespread and deeply rooted belief that the global population of honeybees has been running dangerously low for more than a decade. Spread by you, New York Times, spread by you. So there's a boom in beekeeping. So I love this guy now. Then we've got Scott Hoffman Black, Executive Director of the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation, which is based, of course, in Portland, Oregon. Only the Xerces Society for Invertebrate Conservation can be based in Portland, Oregon.
No backbone.
No back. Oh.
Invertebrate.
Okay.
See me remembering things from school.
I thought you were talking about the people of Portland, Oregon. Perhaps you were. So, you know, and the New York Times does this kind of neutral thing where they describe what happened. A malady, originally dubbed disappearing disease, has been afflicting honeybees for decades. The phenomenon was renamed colony collapse disorder, a bit like how global warming was renamed global heating and now is global boiling and climate craziness. So colony collapse disorder. The cause remains unclear, but experts tend to blame pesticides, of course they do, reduction in forageable habitat of humans, and climate change.
Everything is caused by climate change.
And as the New York Times says, alarm was sounded and Save the Bees became a rallying cry. However, the New York Times now tells us, honeybees, it turns out, you could have known this yourself. Everyone knows this, right? If you live in California, by the way. Well, I suppose you can live in California and not know that California is the biggest agricultural producer on the planet, perhaps. So, honeybees, as they say, are a commercially managed animal. They say essentially livestock, like cows. And large beekeeping operations are remarkably adept at replacing colonies that die. Like farmers, you know, pigs are very prone to dying in commercial farms, and farmers replace them. Why wouldn't they do the same with bees? Of course. Anyway, in the United States, this is an amazing statistic. In the United States, how many hives, now not bees, how many hives do you think are trucked around the United States every year?
I read this, so I know the answer, Phelan.
1 million. 1 million hives are trucked around. You think they couldn't find, you think on a as they say, it's where they pollinate almonds and other crops, it's a major industry. And you think this major industry is going to, you know, just, a third of our hives have died. Let's. And of course, they never tell you what is the normal amount of death rate of a hive. Perhaps that's normal. Anyway, but they then try and claim that they're still vulnerable, but at the same time saying, don't get any more honeybees. They're not needed. And as Mr. Black says, that's the death of these hives is an agricultural story, not a conservation story. And then this quote buried in paragraph 54 that should be the headline of the article. There are now more bees on the planet than there have ever been in human history.
How dare you now, New York Times? This is what they do, you see.
Yes.
This is what they do. They teach the world to sing a complete lie.
Yes.
Complete nonsense. The whole world believes it, acts accordingly, and there's the consequence. More bees than have ever been in history. There was never a danger to the bees.
No.
Because the people who care about bees were caring about bees.
Because it was
a
business.
And because it was a business, actually. That's the best
Capitalism saved bees.
That's it, exactly. Capitalism saves bees and saves everything else as well. Extraordinary.
Yes. So, talking of California, I just want to do a little thing before you. I know you've that poem you want to read at the end. I just want to do a little thing. And New York Times again. By the way, you could just do this podcast all in the New York Times. Look at this headline: California's population in decline. And what are they don't tell you why the population is in decline, but they also their solution: live with it, accept it, embrace it. No, thank you.
Very worrying. And we're living in a state. We're living in a sinking ship here.
A failed state.
Very worrisome.
A failed state. And just to show you why California might be in decline, there is a sheriff's deputy in San Francisco who has got how much in overtime in the last 5 years?
In the last 5 years, okay, I'm going to go completely nuts. And I'm going to say.
Sorry, let me just tell you, his normal salary is $120,000.
Okay, so I'm going to
overtime.
Go exactly. I'm going to go completely nuts, and I'm going to say $500,000.
So you're saying
5 years.
You're saying he gets the same amount of money in overtime as he gets in his salary.
Exactly. Twice his salary.
So $500,000 in 5 years. No, he gets $2.2 million in 5 years in overtime, and that's why California is in decline, and that's why the population is leaving. Because who can, what business, by the way, the business of bringing bees around to keep the world eating. How much you're not going to get 2.2 million in overtime in that. So it's the end of summer, Anne. I think it's the end
of summer. Next week is Labour Day, as we said. Next week we won't be here, but I wanted to give. I just saw this fantastic poem at the end of... yes, I wanted to do this at the end of the show. Brighten that screen up for me there, Philip. I just came across this. I just came across this the other day, and I just thought, oh my God, how perfect, particularly given the fact that I've been swimming for the summer. It's called The Last Swim of Summer by someone called Faith Sheeran, and I just thought it was beautiful. Our pool is still blue, but a few leaves have fallen, floating on the surface of summer. The other swimmers went home last week, tossed their faded bathing suits aside, so my daughter and I are alone in the water, which has grown colder, like a man's hand at the end of a romance. The lifeguard is under her umbrella, but her bags are packed for college. We are swimming against change, remembering the endless shores of June, the light like lemonade, fireflies inside our cupped hands, watermelon night. We are swimming towards the darkness of what is next, walking away from the sounds of laughter and splashing, towels wrapped around the dampness of our loss. Oh, that's so good. Have a fabulous Labour Day, and we will see you the following week. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.